Hi, everyone tuning in out there. My name is Miss Brooke at the Garland County Library, and this is our first live stream for our 2021 summer reading program. I have a bear here, and it's for tales and, of course, tales or books. That's right. So, if you have not registered yet to earn prizes for the time you spend reading and listening to audiobooks, head on over to our website, gclibrary.com. And while you're there, check out all the fun activities that we're doing this summer, both here at the library and virtually. So, we have a comment box today, and if you feel like you want to comment how many hours you've spent reading this summer so far, or any books that you've particularly enjoyed, that would be great. We also have a place for special questions in the comment box for our special guest, Casey Hardaway with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. If you'll put your questions in, I will get to those at the end of her presentation. She is here, and here she is. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Casey.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me. So, I do work for the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. I'm the Southwest Regional Educator, and what that means is that I'm not a game warden. I don't get to go out and protect wildlife by enforcing regulations, and I'm not a wildlife biologist. And most people, those are the two jobs they think of when they think of game and fish. But I'm an educator, which means I get to do stuff like this all the time. I get to hang out with students of all ages and talk about wildlife. And today I want to talk to you guys about the black bear in Arkansas. So this is an American black bear, Ursus americanus. And you guys may have heard that Arkansas used to be known as the Bear State. Well, that's because way back when Arkansas was not even a state yet, back when it was just a territory, and people were moving west and settling these new territories, newspaper accounts from back east described Arkansas as this wild, exciting place with beautiful forests and habitat. And the most exciting thing about it was all the black bears we had. And people were encouraged to come out here and see them, and for hunters to pursue them as a trophy, and for all of the things that can be made from them. And bears really are amazing to see. It's no wonder there was so much hype, and we still like to show off our bears. We see bears in all kinds of things still to this day. But we're lucky that we get to see bears in Arkansas anymore, because way, way back then, bears were harvested too much. This was before the game and fish had been created, and there were market hunters who would take unregulated game, just however much of it they wanted to, and a lot of people were afraid of bears, or there was no reason to protect them. And by the end of all of that, there were only a few dozen bears left in all of Arkansas. That's crazy to imagine nowadays. And so, in the 1950s, the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission quietly captured hundreds of black bears from northern states and from Canada and brought them to Arkansas and released them in our forests. And with the new bears that were brought here, plus all the new rules that protected the bears, their populations rebounded. We still don't have as many bears as we did pre-settlement, and we never will, because some of their habitat is gone. But we did restore these amazing, important creatures. Now, we need bears to live here for the health of our ecosystem. But sometimes human-bear interactions are not always the best. Bears in the past were persecuted due to fear and ignorance. And since their reintroduction, that just means since the time that we brought the bears back, people still sometimes have negative encounters with bears. This usually happens when a young bear gets crowded out of an older bear's territory and the young bear is hungry and wants to go grocery shopping in your trash cans. So since the 1980s, we allowed bear hunting again. Back in the 50s when there were only a few dozen bears left, nobody was allowed to go hunting for bears. But then in the 80s, their populations came back and we made some rules so that people could harvest those nuisance bears and keep us all safe from them. So nowadays, bear hunting is legal and regulated. That's the important thing now. And regulation makes bear populations and human-bear interactions healthier. So how do we know that bear populations are getting better? How do we know how many bears are out there? Well, we monitor bear populations in a number of ways. For one thing, we use harvest information. Every fall, over 400 bears are harvested by hunters here in Arkansas, and samples from these bears are sent to Game and Fish so we can know where they lived and how old they were. It's estimated that we have between 5,000 and 7,000 bears now, so that's a great improvement from the time when there were less than 50 in the state. And the other way we can know how bear health is doing is by doing bear den surveys. Look how cute they are. So this is our large carnivore specialist, Mr. Myron Means, and he is holding 2 bear cubs from a bear den survey. Every winter, while bears are sleepy and slow moving, Myron will go to a den, which he usually finds by tracking a collared female, and he will tranquilize her to keep himself safe. And once she is really, really out and sleepy, he will go in and check out her health, and he will even count her cubs, see how many cubs are in there with her, and he's going to get those out of the den and check them over for their health and just kind of have a good idea of how bears in the state are doing. And then he'll put those cute little babies back with their mom, and they will never know the difference. So, bear den surveys. They're done during the winter when bears are less active. But I have a question for you guys to think about. Do you think that bears in Arkansas hibernate? Maybe type your answer in the chat box if you want to. Do bears hibernate? Well, the answer is yes, but. Yes, but is always a good answer. Hibernation is actually on a spectrum. Very few animals go into true hibernation. That's at the far end of the spectrum where that animal is out cold asleep, and even if you pick them up and shake them, they won't wake up. But not black bears. So you can see in this image here that this black bear in her den in the winter, she was hibernating, but she woke up when a human decided to disturb her and check her out. So on the other end of the spectrum of hibernation is a state called torpor. And when an animal is in a state of torpor, they're sleepy. They're trying to sleep through those cold months when there is very little food available. And they can actually lower their metabolism enough to go 100 days or more without eating. Isn't that crazy? So they're just snoozing and burning up their fat reserves. They slow their heart rate and lower their metabolism. And as you can see, they can be awoken to defend themselves. And sometimes on a warm day in winter, a bear will wake up and leave its den and go out and look for food. So this is kind of what bear dens look like. They're pretty small. It's just a little crevice in a rock or under a rock, and the bear will dig it out to make room for him or herself and her cubs. The time of year when bears are denning, that's also when mother bears have their babies. So mother bears actually breed during the summer, but she does this really cool thing where she waits until she is in her den before she allows the pregnancy to begin. And then, while she's in that state of torpor during the hibernation period, she'll give birth to her babies. And there will usually be 2 or 3, sometimes only 1, and sometimes as many as 6. And she does this while she's practically asleep. Now, she's not totally knocked out. She knows that those babies are coming, but it sounds like a pretty good way to do pregnancy to me. And baby black bears, oh my goodness. Aren't they cute? Well, when they are very first born, they're actually not this cute. I couldn't even find a picture of them. When they are first born, they weigh less than a pound. This is something that's like the size of a squirrel, and they're blind and hairless, and by all descriptions I've heard, pretty ugly. But anyways, they're born with their mother in the den, and they drink her milk while she's hibernating, while she's in that state of torpor. And bear milk is actually one of the most rich and nutritious milks in all of the animal kingdom, which allows those baby bears to grow very quickly. And in just a few weeks, they're these little plump balls of fur that are ready to emerge in spring and hang out and look cute for us. And when they do emerge in spring, they're very hungry. The mama bear will have burned up a lot of her fat reserves, and she's going to be way skinnier than when she first went in there. And so she has to get started right away gaining back the weight she lost. So spring and summer, we've got hungry bears roaming around looking for food. And then in the fall, the bears will begin to gorge themselves with food. I'm talking they're going to spend 14, 18, 20 hours a day eating as much as they can and gaining back weight to prepare to den again. In fact, if you see a bear in the early spring, it could be 50 or 100 pounds smaller than when it first went into its den in the fall. Looking at these images on screen, female bears, they typically weigh between 150 and 250 pounds, but like I said, they're going to be on the smaller end of that spectrum when they emerge from the den in the spring, and on the heavier end when they first go in the fall. But adult male bears, they can be a lot bigger. So just comparing that image in the bottom right corner, you can see on the far right side, that is obviously a male bear. Look how big he is. He weighs at least 300, maybe even 400 or 500 pounds. The record in Arkansas is somewhere up over 600 pounds. That's very uncommon. A 300-pound, 350-pound male bear, that's usually about where they max out at. And then the female, she's a lot smaller, not just in her body size, but if you look at her face, she has a really narrow face. And then age. Sometimes it's hard to tell a young bear that's in its second year of life from a fully grown bear. But I have a little trick for you guys, and I wonder if by looking at your screen, if you can tell one of the big differences between these two bears. And if you want to take a guess and type it into the chat, I'll give you a second. So looking at these two bears, there are several differences. One looks a little bit bigger and chubbier. All right, I've given you a minute to think about it. The difference is their ears. If you see the bear at the bottom, he's got some cute fluffy ears, but compare him to the bear on his left side, and that bear has really prominent ears. So you might see a bear that stands up as tall as a man, but he's not necessarily a full-grown bear if he has these really big, like Mickey Mouse ears sticking out. So that's one way you can tell their age. What do bears eat? What do you guys think they eat? You guys can take a guess if you want to. But looking at their skull, That's one way to figure it out because we can see their teeth, right? And an animal's teeth can tell us a lot about what kind of diet they're going to have. One of the first things I notice looking at this skull are those big, sharp teeth towards the front of the mouth. Those are called canines. And what do you think those teeth are for? I'm betting they're for eating meat, right? Bears love to catch fish and small game. But you know what? They have some other kinds of teeth too. So if you look at the very, very front, they have these flatter teeth, and those are for grazing on grass or browsing on woody vegetation. And then they have some chewing teeth in the back, and those are for berries and insects and acorns. And, you know, bears eat all kinds of things. If you think of everything that bears eat, including human food straight out of our garbage can, they have a pretty varied diet. So they're omnivores, but they're also technically carnivores. Looking at that skull, you can see why bears are technically considered carnivores. And our bear scientists at the Game and Fish Commission are large carnivore specialists. So the meat that bears eat, that actually makes up only 10% of their diet, and the other 90% during most times of the year is going to be the grass, the bark, the berries, honey. Bears love honey if they can find it, and all those other things that are not necessarily meat. Well, speaking of canines, did you guys know that bears have an incredible sense of smell? Maybe even better than a dog's? You know, think about all of the ways that we use dogs to help us detect smells that humans can't, right? Dogs have a great nose. But in fact, a dog's sense of smell is only 200 times better than a person's, while a bear's sense of smell is over 1,000 times stronger than ours. And so, a bear's sense of smell is one of their most powerful senses. That's how they're out there finding honey and finding food to eat. And it also means that we have to be really careful with what kind of stuff we leave laying around because a bear can smell it from a really long ways off and they can find it. I wonder what other kinds of observations you guys can make about this skull. So, bears have pretty small eye sockets, and bears are nearsighted, so they can't see great. That's why it's important not to startle them. Bears also can't hear really well. And maybe you guys have heard that a bear's brain is only the size of a walnut. That's funny, but it's not exactly true. It's probably closer to the size of an apple, and that's still only a third the size of a human brain. And while our olfactory organ, olfactory is the part of the brain that works with the nose to make sense of smells, is only the size of a pencil eraser, that's pretty small, you guys. Humans do not have a great sense of smell. A bear's olfactory organ is the size of a human thumb. So it's a whole lot bigger, and that's why their sense of smell is 1,000 times stronger than ours. So black bear tracks. This is a good way to know if you're sharing the woods with some black bears. They have two different tracks that you can see in this image. Their hind foot and their front foot. The hind print is a lot bigger. This one, the 6 and 7 inches, this is going to be from a male bear. Remember, female bears, there's a very strong sexual dimorphism between them. So a female bear is going to have smaller tracks. A juvenile bear is going to have smaller tracks. These really big ones, these are from a male bear. And that hind track, you know, it's thicker and fuller than the front footprint. And that's what they look like in the mud. So that's one way you know if you're sharing the woods with bears. Some other signs of bears include claw or teeth marks on the trees. Now, if you're thinking that that kind of looks like a warning sign, like that bear just went up there and clawed that tree to show you how strong his claws are, that's kind of a little bit true. Bears are actually, bears will actually claw away bark on a tree to eat the bark. And something else bears do with trees, they like to rub up on them and scratch their backs. Bears do this, not just because they're always itchy, but they're leaving behind signs on trees. These claw marks, the hair, all of their different smells are markers to communicate with other bears about, what territory is theirs, and also to let other bears know that they're receptive to mates. And of course, the other sign of bears that you might look for is bear scat. Scat is poo, for those of you who don't know yet. Bear scat is going to be a big pile of brown, it's a lot. It can fill up both of your hands, and it's going to be full of grass and berry seeds, depending on what kind of food is available at that time. Now, do you guys remember how I said earlier that systematically removing bears, systematically just means that they were almost all eliminated. Systematically removing bears from the food chain was destroying our ecosystem. Well, bears actually play a very important role, one of the most important of all the animals around. I cannot stress their importance enough. In fact, they're so important that they're considered a keystone species. So if you look at this wall, all of the carefully placed stones that make up its structure, if you remove one of those stones, of course, the wall is going to be weaker for sure, but it'll probably still stand. However, look at the stone at the top of the arch in the doorway. That one is known as a keystone. It has to be just the right shape for that structure to be strong. It has to be placed correctly. Everything about it needs to be just right. And if you remove that, the whole wall will crumble and fall. And that is what happened when we took away the bears. All the other stones that were leaning on that wall, which is kind of like all the other plants and animals that interacted with the bears, they become weaker, and over time they fall, and the whole wall can be gone. So why are they considered a keystone? Well, you guys know what a food chain is, right? The food chain is who eats whom in an ecosystem. Plants get their food from the sun, animals eat the plants, and some animals eat other animals. The animals that eat other animals are called predators. The animals that get eaten are called prey. And some animals are both, like this bass. It is a predator of frogs and fish, but lots of other animals, like me, like to eat bass. And then there are apex predators. They're at the top of the food chain, and no other animal eats them. So apex predators are almost always important because they keep the food chain regulated. They're out there making sure that the rabbit population isn't too high, because when you're overpopulated with rabbits, they eat all the grass and then there's no grass left and they starve to death. Or maybe there are too many deer browsing in the forest and no new trees can grow. So they need a predator to keep everything in balance. When we removed black bears from the ecosystem in Arkansas, we noticed a top-down effect and trophic cascades. And that's just a term that people use to describe the food chain and how removing one important component of it can just make the whole thing fall apart. Bears are also ecosystem engineers. And this is a fancy term. An engineer, what they do is they build things. And believe it or not, Bears are out there having a similar influence on their environment. They're engineering it, they're building it to be a certain way. And they do this through their foraging habits. They eat tons of berries, and then you guys saw the scat picture earlier. They're pooping out all those seeds. Well, some seeds have to go through an animal's digestive system in order to germinate. And so, in that way, bears are planting tons of wild food out there. And without bears eating and pooping and leaving their scat, we don't have as many of these plants. And bears are also ecosystem engineers because they eat lots of fish. And then when they're out there pooping out that nitrogen rich scat that they have, they're fertilizing and making the soil even more nutritious. So that's a lot of ways that bears have a big influence on the ecosystem. There are 8 different bear species in the whole world, and they all play similar roles in the ecosystems they're part of. But only the black bear lives in Arkansas. It's pretty easy to tell the difference between the bears. Most orders of animals, there are hundreds, thousands of species, but when it comes to bears, there are only 7. And here in North America, we have 3 different kinds of bears, but not in Arkansas. Only the black bear lives in Arkansas. In other places, out west, you might see a grizzly bear, and up in Alaska, way, way, way far up north, you might encounter a polar bear. The polar bears are the biggest. Grizzly bears are in the middle, the second biggest, and black bears, they're the smallest, but they're not small animals. Remember, I said that male black bear could get up to 600 pounds. Bears do walk on all fours, but they can stand on their hind legs to make gestures and send messages. And not all black bears are black. They can be blonde, cinnamon, brown, any number of colors. And then some black bears have a crescent mark on their neck, which kind of makes them look like that Asiatic black bear in the previous slide. And they are actually related. You can find lots more information on bears at our website, agfc.com, including a link to bearwise.org. And Bearwise is all about safety. So let's talk for just a second about how to stay safe when you encounter a bear. We have a quote here that I like. You know what to do. Know what to do when you see a bear. Never run from it. Don't approach a bear. Just quietly move away and leave the area. However, if a bear does approach you, make yourself look big, make loud noises, clap your hands, and continue to back away. So that's the short and sweet of bear safety if you encounter a bear. But let's get a little bit more into it because that's not always how it plays out. Believe it or not, people have encountered bears inside buildings. Yes, if your door is unlocked and easy to open and your home is in a place where bears live, bears will let themselves inside and rummage through your kitchen. If this happens to you, make sure that you don't make the bear feel locked in. Just kind of leave the doors open where it can get to the doors, because bears typically don't see humans as food. They're not going to attack you. They're wild animals, and even though they are capable predators, they would rather escape than mess with a human. Never lock a bear in a room. If you see a bear in your backyard, you can make loud noises to scare it away. Some people say that you should sing or make noises when you're in the woods. The idea is that you don't want to scare the bear, but remember that they don't have great sense of hearing, so you might have to be kind of loud or sing constantly to alert the bear to your presence so that it isn't startled. Now, if you're in the woods, if you see a bear before it notices you, stand still, enjoy the moment, and back away. That's all you have to do. You don't have to freak out or be scared. You don't have to harm the bear. If you see it before it sees you, take a picture and back away. If you encounter a bear that is aware of you, Do not run. Running can trigger a chase response. Instead, again, back away slowly. And if the bear tries to follow you, you're going to want to do some slightly different tactics. Again, don't run away, stand your ground, back away only when the bear stops approaching you. You can make yourself look bigger. The bear is definitely not going to want to pick a fight with you if it perceives that you could hurt it. So, raise your arms, raise your jacket. Myron Means, the man who does the bear den surveys, he says that he has been charged by a bear and he knew not to run from it. Instead, he just stayed calm. And when the bear got really close to him, just a few feet away, he stomped his foot on the ground, threw his arms in the air, and yelled, "Yeah, bear." And sure enough, it turned around and left. That's known as a bluff charge. And, the bear is just bluffing and trying to scare you away. A lot of females with their babies will do that, and that's why that happened to Mr. Maines. And then worst case scenario, if a bear does attack you, you fight back with everything you've got. It's probably not gonna pursue you to the end, but playing dead in the case of a black bear encounter is not advised. Of course, though, it's always best to just avoid unwanted bear encounters. All of this information is on bearwise.org, and I encourage you to review it before you go out for a hike or a walk. Stay aware, be with other people, keep kids and pets close, make noise so you don't scare them away or so you don't startle them. And you can carry bear spray, which is like a pepper spray, and it will deter a bear. And if you're camping, the most important thing is do not store food in your tent, because just like a bear will open up your door and go into your kitchen to rummage around, it'll come into your tent looking for food if it smells it with that great nose that they had. Cook very far away from your tent. Clean the area thoroughly. Make sure that, just make sure you don't smell like food. You can store your food in, if you guys see the illustration to the side, like hang it up in a tree, have bear-proof ice chests. All of these things can help make sure that the bear doesn't use his really powerful sense of smell to find you and perceive you as food. All right, I am ready for questions. I hope you guys are interested in bears.
Great. Thank you. That was so informative, Casey, and that was enjoyable to watch all of your pictures. There was a lot on bear scat, which was very fun. So if you're into wild scat, you should catch us next time for our program online streaming. Let's see if we've got some good comments. With the comparison between the two bears, we had a comment about not as much fur being on the snout of one of them. I'm guessing that would be on the left-hand side. The bear, would that indicate age if they have less hair on them?
Or time of year. They go through shedding processes. It could indicate age, and also, the female has a smaller, it might look less fuzzy snout. So good observation.
Yeah. Another question is, do Kodiaks qualify as a subspecies of brown bear? Do you know?
I don't know. I'm familiar with Arkansas bears, which is just the black bear. There is a subspecies of black bear that lives in Louisiana only, but we don't have it here in Arkansas. So any bear you see in Arkansas, unless it escaped from the zoo, is just an American black bear.
Okay. I have a question too. Why do you think females are smaller compared to males?
It's because bears are very territorial, and male bears will fight each other for the chance to breed with a female. So the bigger, stronger bear is going to win, and he will be genetically favored in the next generation.
Okay. Oh, I just got another question. Are there black bears in Garland County?
Yes. For sure. I've had lots of people report to me that they've seen black bears around hot springs in the village area. There have even been nuisance bears in Garland County, and the Game and Fish Commission was called to come and tranquilize those bears and try to relocate them to a more suitable habitat. You know, Garland County is close to beautiful forests that are perfect for bears, but bears using that sense of smell will come into human environments looking for food, and they have to be relocated back to a more appropriate place.
Yeah. So if we do see a black bear, we'll just call the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission locally, or is there a hotline?
Either way, it'll get reported to the right place. You can even let me know, and I will pass the word along. But if you see a bear that is being a nuisance, like if it's repeatedly tearing up your trash cans, you know, there are things you can do to deter the bear. They're not going to come around if they don't smell. So, you know, having trash cans with locking lids, keeping the area sprayed off with a hose, you know, getting rid of that smell might just keep the bear away on its own. If the bear has visited your area enough times to associate it with food, even in the absence of smell, you know, then the bear might be a nuisance and might need to be relocated. It's a little bit different in every situation. You know, there are ways to live safely alongside bears. A lot of people have bears that'll come into their urban environments and they observe them from a distance, and the bears never become a nuisance. So if you see a bear, consider yourself lucky and stay safe around it.
Another question is, how long does cubbing season last? Do you know?
Cubbing season. So, you know, the cubs are born inside their den and they grow for a few months. Baby bears will stay with their mother for 3 or 4 years sometimes. Something kind of sad about cubs is that they're at risk of being eaten by a male bear. So yay for hunters to go out and harvest these big, mean male bears that'll kill the cubs to cause their mother to come back in so he can breed with her.
Yeah. Some people might be sensitive to the idea of hunting male bears. Can you tell us a little bit about what that does for the conservation for bears, allowing people to hunt them?
Absolutely. So, you know, bears are an apex predator. There's nothing out there in the wild that is going to keep their populations in check. Having just enough bears in the state is really important, just like having just enough white-tailed deer is important. And, you know, if too few deer are harvested, we get all of these car strikes that we have to deal with and deer overbrowsing forests. And bears are the same way. So, you know, when they're out of balance, some of them need to be removed. You know, we're removing those nuisance species through hunting so that we don't have to go out and tranquilize and relocate every single nuisance species. And then, like I said, with the male bear example, if you've got too many male bears in the population, then you don't have as many cubs coming into the population. So it could actually, it benefits the bears in a lot of ways. You know, hunters are out there not wanting to kill a baby bear or a mama bear. They're looking for this big guy behind me, the big trophy one. And those are the ones that need to be thinned out of the herd.
Okay. Well, awesome. Great. I just want to show everyone a picture of Casey at one of our in-house programs here at the library. She's holding an alligator. And this is here at the library a couple summers ago. We miss having in-person programs with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, but this is a really great alternative. Comment in the comment section if you've enjoyed this program. Let's see, what else do we have? Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're watching this later on, thank you so much for doing that. Our next live stream with Arkansas Game and Fish Commission is going to be July 13th for wild scat, aka poop, and that's going to be pretty fun. And anything else from you, Casey, that you'd like to say before we leave?
I just want to encourage everybody to get outdoors and have fun and learn about wildlife and how to stay safe around it and how to appreciate all that's wild. And thanks for having me. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Casey, and we'll see you next time.
All right, let's see y'all.